Welcome to Lighten Up, a show about bringing more love, light, and joy into your life, and archived on the Lighten Up program page. Please join us in the chat room by clicking on the chat room icon located on the left-hand side of our menu bar. Now the host of Lighten Up, Isabel Merians.
Welcome to Lighten Up with Isabel, your good news show. I want to thank my viewers here and around the world for your continued viewing. You really honor me by continuing to do this. Okay, so searching for good news is not always easy today, but I did find some. I found out that a group of Republican and Democratic governors have recalled their troops that are located on the Mexican border. And they're saying they will not support Donald Trump's cruel separation of children from their parents. I thought that was very good news, that there's someone finally standing up to him, and other governors are refusing to send troops as well. The other bit of news that I found that was interesting was that an American subnational delegation has bypassed Trump and committed to keeping America's Paris goals on climate control. So those two pieces of news are really important. And honestly, I had tried to veer away from politics during this show, but those two bits of news were so wonderful I couldn't help but share them. Excellent. And now, very good news is Dr. Robert Kandarjian, who is a chiropractor and an intuitive healer, is back by popular demand. Welcome, Robert.
Thank you.
I'm so delighted, and I will tell you a little bit about Robert if you haven't seen the other show. Not only is he a chiropractor and an intuitive healer, he's also the author of 3 books. Welcome. Thank you for coming back.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I had so much fun last time.
I know, we always
And when
do.
you invited me, I said, yes, let's do it again. Because it was
Wonderful.
such a spontaneous but yet informative hour.
Yeah, well, it was a lot of fun.
Yes.
So today there are 3 things I want to talk about.
Right.
Thoughts, which lead to the second one, intentions, which leads to the third thing, which is the energy put into achieving those intentions. Now, there's an old saying that the road to hell is paved with good intentions, meaning that many people sprout off and say, oh, I intend to do this, and they never do any of it. So that's where that saying comes from.
Yes.
But today I really want to talk about our thoughts.
Yes.
And how they ultimately affect not only our lives, but our well-being.
Right. Yes.
So are you good with that?
Yeah, let's do that. Absolutely. I think that's such a wonderful topic that you brought in, because our thoughts are heard by our cells.
Our physicality.
Right. Our body hears our thoughts, and this is something we were talking about today. So when we are thinking negative things about ourselves, especially, we're being self-critical, self-judgmental.
It's non-productive.
Our body hears it.
Yeah.
Our body hears it, and there's enough evidence now and research that shows that when the body hears such negative thoughts, it begins to age faster.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So thoughts are so important in our lives. Obviously, the most important thought, I believe, is gratitude and counting the blessings that we do have. We may not have everything we want, but we have to be grateful for the things that we do have, which kind of opens the door for more to come in. Like when our thoughts operate in the consciousness of scarcity, we're in trouble.
Absolutely.
When our thoughts operate in the consciousness of abundance, we're going to do much better. I find that there are 2 major thoughts globally that really rule the planet, unfortunately, the 2 negative thoughts. One is there isn't enough, the scarcity consciousness. And the other one is it's not my fault. Yeah, right? The thought that it's I'm going to blame. I am the victim. I'm going to blame. And of course, victims don't grow, and and there's no sense of accountability. So if we can change our thoughts, and whenever there's a conflict, say, to ask ourselves, how did I possibly contribute to this conflict? Then we have potential to grow, and our thoughts are going to change to a thinking and a consciousness that's more responsible and more accountable. And the former one, which was the thought of there isn't enough, right? The scarcity thought. I mean, it implies in many areas there isn't enough opportunity, there isn't enough money, there isn't enough love, right? So when we continually live in that consciousness, we are just going to create a life where there is not going to be enough. We're going to attract that and magnetize. And the last thing I would like to say is that our thoughts magnetize. Mm-hmm. Thoughts are magnetic energy.
Absolutely.
When we're thinking scarcity, we're going to magnetize scarcity.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Well, on the way up, the drive up, Robert and I were talking, and I was telling him a little secret. Yeah. And that was about Deepak Chopra. When he was first starting out, he was doing a series of lectures, and I had met him several times. And one of the things he always said, be careful what you think and be careful what you say, because your cells of your body are always listening in. So if you say to yourself, I'm healthy, I am well, I'm living my life in gratitude, the cells within the body, and as you say, there's scientific proof of this, act on that thought.
Yes.
So thoughts are powerful. They're real things.
Yes.
And let's talk about a little bit about our intention, because our thoughts lead to our intentions. So if someone is thinking negatively, it's very hard for them to step out of that negative pattern and develop positive intentions. They may try to, but it's much more difficult.
Right.
I was with someone the other day who said to me, anyone looking at my life would say I have everything. Material possessions, wonderful family, this. She went through the whole list of things. And then she said, but I'm not happy. And I said, well, maybe it's because you are not, your soul is speaking to you. Right. You've always done good works in the world.
Right.
You've always been involved in, whether it was fundraising for a nonprofit organization or for a good cause, and you've stopped doing that. So thinking about other people and ways to be helpful to other people, that intention can pull a person out of negative thinking.
Yes.
In other words, if you're not thinking about yourself, because most people are so self-centered, everything that happens they internalize as relating to them.
Right.
And if they can get beyond that and think about how they can help someone else, it's often a very helpful way of doing it.
Yes. I think the highest calling is a life of service. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Whether it's in the health field or in the nonprofit field or in
the directing
in civic
field.
Absolutely. And but there has to be a balance between serving others and taking care of ourselves, right?
Absolutely.
So as long as we have that intention that we want to serve, and at the same time we don't want to burn out from serving,
Absolutely.
we want to refuel,
Absolutely.
then we have a nice balance, and we're going to live a life that is going to feel a life that's going to feel fulfilled.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with you totally on that.
Yeah.
You know, I always thought that the image of the cross somehow was an image of man's suspension between heaven and earth. You know, you're grounded here, and yet you want to evolve beyond it.
Yes.
But I don't know why that image always seemed that way to me.
You know, the image that works for me is the image of the tree, actually, because it to me it's about rooting. You know, it has its roots and it goes into the earth.
Right.
So it has an earth energy, and at the same time it goes upward
toward the sky,
to the heavens, to the sky, and it's always keeping that connection to the celestial, right? And I once read a beautiful line. It said, "Health is when you have wings and roots.
Yes,
right?
I read that.
Somewhere.
That's a lovely,
I don't know who wrote it, but
yeah.
So it's that balance of having roots and wings. Mm-hmm. But coming back to the intentions, I think any intention that feeds that feeds what is it I need to do to expand my wings or to free my wings, and what is it I need to do to root myself, then that's a pretty good journey. That's a very self-healing approach to life.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
I don't know if I touched your question though on intentions.
Well, I mean, you wrote a book called Sacred Intentions,
right.
So you should be the master of the intention department.
Yes. Intentions are wishes, but I like what you said earlier, which is the intention coming from the soul, right?
Absolutely.
Is it a soulful intention, or is it an intention that's coming from a personality that is not always evolved and not always anchored in
what's best even for the individual?
Yes.
Right. As well as for other people.
Right. So I think what we need to differentiate and really get quiet and ask ourselves is this intention coming from my soul, or is this intention coming from my personality that's not always healthy? And I think that's the tricky part, you see. Like a lot of people believe that their intentions and their wishes are coming from a healthy place, which it may not be. Like, for example, somebody may set an intention and say, I'm going to go for that job, I'm going to go for that interview, and I'm going to get that interview. And their whole intention and focus and thought is to succeed in that interview and get that job. But that's not enough, you see, because they need to connect. They need to get quiet and connect and ask themselves, is this the job? Is this job for my highest good? Does this job serve my soul? Right? Because you may get the job, but you're not going to be happy, because if the intention and the wish is coming from the personality, we may get what we want, but that doesn't mean we'll be happy.
Well, the problem, though, Robert, is the fact that many people don't have that option. A guy has a family, and he's got to feed them. The rent is due, so he's got to. Very often, people don't have the option of going within and saying, is this basically the job for my soul?
Right.
Because when I first came to New York and we had nothing, I mean, literally zero, I need to get a job. Mm-hmm. And I took a job in the most unlikely place you can ever imagine.
Right.
I took it because I needed the job. Mm-hmm. So there are people who are still in that position. That's
very true. Yes.
So we have to be understanding of that fact. It can't always. Our intention can be from the heart, but we also have to face the reality of our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean, there are many things I would like to do that realistically, I realize that I cannot do.
Yeah.
Such as be on the stage at the Metropolitan Opera House.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's just, I would love that. Would it be fun? Yes, I would love it.
Right. But even for the man or the woman who is struggling and looking for a job that may not be where money is absolutely necessary to feed the children.
Right.
And I certainly empathize with that, and I certainly, I've been there myself. I think sometimes even if we take the job that's not for our calling, we should still keep our options open and keep looking for something that can become our calling.
Absolutely. I don't suggest that getting the job is the end,
Yes.
And then, of course, there's a question of the energy that you put into whatever you're doing. Mm-hmm. The intention can be wonderful and altruistic or whatever, but it's also about energy.
Yes.
And where do you want to place your energy? And obviously, everybody wants to put their energy into something productive, something fulfilling, something joyous. I mean, you would certainly hope so.
Right.
But how much energy are you willing to devote? And this becomes an issue because many people have the intention, but they don't devote the energy to it. So it never actually becomes reality.
So by energy you mean the effort, yes?
The effort, yes, of course.
Right. Absolutely. I always say everybody gets an A for effort, And you're right. I mean, if the effort is not made, if the motivation is not there to make the effort, then those intentions are not going to be realized. I mean, there is work that needs to be put into. If I want to really learn how to play the violin in a masterful way, I have to make the effort in practicing 4 or 5 hours a day. Mm. And you're right. I mean, some people don't make the effort. I don't necessarily know. I mean, everybody's different. There are individual stories or why people don't make the effort, but energy follows thought, right?
Yes.
And I'm a strong believer in that. Energy follows thought, and if our thoughts are in learning to play the violin, then we will put the energy and make the effort to do it.
Well, I have a nice little personal story I'd like to share.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago, my daughter, Melanie, who is currently the CEO of a very large foundation in L.A. that helps many people, decided she wanted to learn tango. And she became so focused on it. She was dancing 4 or 5 nights a week after work, putting in enormous time. And she called me the other day and said, "Mom, guess what?" I said, "What?" She said a performance group, a stage performance group, had invited her to join this very small troupe that had recently won the United States stage dancing tango group in the country.
Yeah.
I said, what a compliment. I mean, but this is an example of someone who had the intention to really, wasn't even thinking in terms of stage performance.
Yeah.
She was thinking in terms of learning everything she could about tango, the music, the composers, the dance steps, the variations. And I thought that was a wonderful story because it just shows you that if you are strong enough in your intention and want to put the energy behind it, that you can really accomplish some pretty amazing things.
Yeah, that sounds like concentrated thought, which I call passion. Right?
Yes.
It's like when we're passionate about something.
Absolutely.
We have this. The thoughts become concentrated and really focused
and driving. They become a driving force.
Yeah, the motivation is strong. It's like laser beam intention. Passion is a very powerful thing. I mean, of course, some passions can be quite negative, but passion is probably one of the most concentrated forms of thought.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with you on that. Well, I think mastering your thoughts, your intentions, and putting your energy into things could lead to a much greater happiness for the individual.
Right.
And happiness has been something that I've been really, really interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Really interested in. And they've done a great many scientific studies now on what makes people happy. And one of the things they found in the process, scientists have found that people who are living their life in gratitude or people who say that they are happy live longer lives.
Right.
So that it's having a physical effect on the body. Mm-hmm. A very positive physical effect, which is wonderful.
Right. The gratitude piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think what you're saying is the more gratitude we're in, the greater the opportunity for happiness.
Happiness and a longer life.
Right.
And actually, I heard recently that there's a happiness institute that was founded. I'm trying to remember. I think it was in Sweden.
The Happiness Institute.
Mm-hmm. Which is interesting.
It would be Sweden, probably.
I think it's
or
Sweden.
Denmark, right.
I also looked into those things that supposedly foster happiness. And close personal relationships and friendships is one of the leading things.
Yes. Also, our good friend Sharon, she would add curiosity.
Curiosity,
right?
absolutely.
And I think when we lose curiosity about life, or about, I think I really believe curiosity is such an important piece. Even the curiosity of wanting to read a book or see a particular movie we feel passionate about. Just curiosity in general, you know. But of course, the curiosity of connecting to people is really a wonderful curiosity to foster.
And I also think we have to be very selective in the people that we involve with.
Yes, yes.
And that's very important.
I think one of the keys to happiness is try to surround ourselves with community of people who are positive and
reinforcing.
Who have an optimistic view of life.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, not that we are going into a Pollyanna experience here. I mean, life has its difficult moments, but optimism goes a long way.
Absolutely.
You know?
I agree
and
with
I think
you.
when we're around people who don't see things optimistically and continue on the glass is half full thought energy, right? It just drains us as friends to them.
Well, I have found I've become highly selective of my use of energy.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things. Don't you think?
Very highly selective.
Don't you think as we grow older, that becomes like an important piece in our lives, like the people we choose to connect with.
Absolutely.
You know, when we're younger, we feel like we have all the time in the world, and I believe, certainly as I've gotten older, I've realized, like, wow, my time is very precious, and it's also a limited thing, and I must really use it
as wisely as possible.
As wisely as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Another thing that I found in checking on happiness is people who have a sense of purpose in the world are much happier. Mm-hmm. And that sense of purpose can be very wide-ranging. Right. It can include many, many things.
Sure. Like for your daughter, that purpose for that time in her life was to learn tango, you know. Mm-hmm. And so the purpose, I feel purpose can be both internal and external. Like it can be internal. I have a purpose for myself. I want to build a house, let's say, right? Mm-hmm. Or I want to build a small business. Or, and then there's the external, which is like I want to contribute.
Yes.
Right? So I think when we have those dual purposes, we have a nice balance, something that takes care of us and fills our passions. Mm-hmm. That's something for us and our family, perhaps, and then something that's outside of the front door that contributes
to the general well-being.
Yes.
No, I agree with you on that. Right. And of course, we've addressed the concept of appreciation. And as one friend said to me, every morning when I wake up, I say, God, thank you for another day.
Yeah.
So there are all kinds of appreciation.
Right.
We appreciate our friends.
Right.
We appreciate a good dinner. We appreciate a gazillion things. But remembering to be appreciative, I think, is one of the best things we can do in terms of happiness.
Yes, yes. You know, in my book, Sacred Intentions, I have this one line where it says, happiness is also making good decisions. Right?
Yes.
I just want to touch on that for a moment. I really believe when we're making good decisions, we're going to have a more fulfilled life. So how can we get there? What is it we need to do to make a good decision? And I think there's a number of things we need to do. First of all, sometimes in order to make a good decision, we need counsel, whether it's the counsel of an accountant, the counsel of a good friend, a wise friend, or the counsel of a therapist, or a counsel of a doctor. So in order to make decisions, sometimes we have to turn outside and get advice from others. And then there's the other side of that, which is in order to make decisions, we have to really get still, get quiet, and really, really, really listen. And not shut out the noise that's out there and really listen. And this is something that you talk about often in your tapes and your meditation tapes and your hypnotherapy tapes, which is to go inside and get quiet. And that's something we really have to talk more about in the public arena, because we don't really do enough of that. Our life, especially in the New York metro area, is so externalized. There's so much noise out there that we're always listening to.
Well, a lot of that, Robert, is this new obsession with speed.
Yes.
You know, the fastest computer, the fastest this, the fastest that. And my feeling is very much that man's heartbeat, if it's healthy, is about 60 times a minute.
Yeah.
And nothing should go faster than that, because it takes the human out of humanness. You know, it's like they've always used to talk about multitasking.
Yeah.
And recently I read that they've done studies on multitasking. And what did they find? They found out that multitasking is far less efficient than seeing one thought through before you're over here, you know, doing something with the other hand.
Yes.
So
yes.
I really feel that this focus on speed and technology,
Right.
although it's helped in many ways, and it's connected us certainly to the world and to a world of information,
Right.
I feel that in some sense it's also dehumanizing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It does have, and it can have its negative sides. But you know, don't you think nature is probably one of the most?
I was just getting ready. You
yeah,
must be reading my
yeah,
thoughts,
right.
Robert. We've been hanging out together too long. I was just about to say.
Like when I work with patients and they say, "So what, Doc? What do I do to go inside?" Like, I think you're right. You know, that sounds like a good idea. Like, what can I do to do that? And I say, go into nature. That's the ultimate cathedral.
Right.
That's the ultimate temple. Like, go into nature. For some person it could be the lake, or another person could be the ocean, another person it's the mountain. But I've always found that nature is probably one of the best ways to go inward and find that stillness, so that we can make those effective decisions.
Well, yesterday
Yeah.
in the morning, I looked out my back window, and there was a beautiful doe and her little baby fawn out there. It was such a beautiful sight. No matter what I had been doing, no matter what pressure I had been under, just dropped away, and I was fascinated. And I stood there at the window
Yes.
and watched them eating my plants, which was fine with me,
Yeah.
you know. And they were just, and so I'm certainly agreeing with you on this.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be that you have to drive somewhere. You can just be outside
Yes.
of your own yard, or outside taking a bicycle ride.
Or lie back on a deck or a
Yeah,
piece of grass and just look at the sky.
absolutely.
Just let go. Of course, we just let go the technology, let go the noise.
One of the things I did in preparation for this program, I went online and looked up the happiest cities in the United States. It was really fascinating, because I found that one of the most attractive things about these cities were that they had a lot of space for biking and a lot of open spaces,
Right.
green space.
Right.
And it seems that the peoples were not as frenetic. The lifestyle was much slower. And they listed the 25 top happiest cities, and many of them went along the California coastline, where you have the sequoias and the redwoods and
Yes.
all these, and the
And the
ocean.
ocean.
And, you know,
Sure.
one was in Honolulu,
Right.
several were in Virginia. I should have really jotted them down, because it was really quite fascinating.
So space was a common denominator.
Space,
The outdoor space.
As you say, being out in nature.
Right.
Another thing I want to address is self-care, because, as you say, the balance between the wings and the roots
Yes.
and caring for oneself is absolutely primary.
Yes.
And, you know, you see people who've abused their bodies,
Right.
and even with the thought that they were helping themselves. Like, you hear lots of runners who've helped their hearts, but their joints are all need replacement. Or you
Yes.
hear, you know, so it's always got to be a balance
Right.
in the way people take care of themselves.
Yes. I think that, yeah. I think self-care has a lot to do with listening. Like listening, getting quiet and listening. Because the mind can wake up in the morning and say, okay, I'm going to run 5 miles today, right? That's what the mind wants. That's part of the ego material. But if we get quiet and listen, we should be asking, how many miles does my body want to do? Right? The body may say 3.5, or it may say 6.
Or it may say none.
Right. So when we're listening to the body, we're less likely to hurt ourselves.
Right.
So I think it's this listening thing.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's really interesting because, people who supposedly have so much information at our fingertips about taking care of one's health.
Right.
And yet there's still people who are out there smoking.
Right.
Or who are abusing whatever.
Right.
And then all of a sudden one day they wake up and they don't understand why they're not feeling perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And, they want the doctor to give them a pill,
right,
a magic bullet that's just going to erase all those years
right,
of abusing.
But that's also, yes, you're right, there is an individual choice there, but it's also a cultural phenomenon because the culture itself has been sending this program for decades saying that we are going to find that magic pill for you. So it's okay if you continue eating the bad foods. Don't worry, we have this magic thing that's going to come that's going to lower your cholesterol, and we're not going to talk about what foods you should change. But so there's this cultural thinking that has people believing that there is, the big corporations are out there are going to take care of us and they're going to give us that magic solution.
Well, I think I also have to say one thing, and that is that the AMA, the American Medical Association, has fostered this element of fear on the populace. Yeah. You've got to have a flu shot because this flu's going to be bad this year, and all my friends who get flu shots get the flu. And they say to me, "What's wrong with you? Don't you know you should get a flu shot?" And I say, No, I don't think so. Right. And as a matter of fact, one of my friends said she was so annoyed that she said to her doctor, "What strain of flu did I get?" And he told her. She said, "That's exactly the shot that I had against that specific flu this year." So when they say to me, "You've got to have a flu shot," I mean, the AMA has perpetrated a lot of nonsense on the American people that they're buying. And I find that totally inappropriate.
Yeah, I think any organization that creates a dependency on the masses is problematic. And when we have dependency on the AMA or the FDA, and although some of these organizations should exist as long as they're doing the right thing,
they've become too powerful.
Yeah, but coming back to self-care,
Well, wait, before we do that, I just want to make a quick statement about the AMA.
Yes.
About, oh my goodness, so many years ago, I hate to even think how far back, I had worked on a documentary with a friend about the most common helpful information that was out there on cancer.
Right.
And we had gone down to the National Cancer Institute in Washington, and we had gone to Fox Chase, where they have another very fine cancer, group. And we had put together so much material that was amazing. However, the material was totally truthful. And after we had typed it up, we presented it to a vice president of one of the big networks. I think it was CBS at the time. And he read it and he said, "You've done an excellent job." He said, "But you can't present this." We said, "Really? Why not?" He said, "Because the AMA would never permit it. And no drug manufacturer would ever pay to put this on television." He said to me, "You must realize that the AMA and the NRA, the National Rifle Association, are the two most powerful organizations in this country in terms of their power." So that's when I learned a little bit about the AMA. But anyhow, that I shouldn't really throw in all these personal experiences.
Right.
Anyhow,
they're valid experiences.
Now, a lot of talk is being thrown about exercising the brain. There's a doctor on television by the name of Dr. Amen,
Yes, I've watched some of his material.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's very interesting because the perception is that there are ways of keeping the mind sharp and in control.
Right.
And what has been your experience with this, Robert?
I'll tell you,
with your patients?
You know what I've come to I don't have a research documentary on this, but I really believe optimism is what keeps the brain elastic
and curious.
Optimism, it's so key. I see it. I've been practicing 35 years, and I see it in my patients who are the ones who are more optimistic. They tend to have better memory. They tend to respond faster. There's something sharp about them. Mm-hmm. I can't nail it exactly why or how it's sharp, but there's something sharp about their energy and their thoughts. I think optimism is really key. And of course, the other things that we know from those type of shows, which is just keep practicing your brain, do crossword puzzles, read. Don't just watch visually, but also read. Talk.
Yeah, be responsive to stimuli.
And don't isolate.
Mm-hmm.
People who isolate, I believe, lose that. They don't lose it, but that elasticity is compromised.
Well, it's interesting.
That's been my personal experience.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting to me that when Albert Einstein died, he left his brain to science. And when they started dissecting his brain, they found out that he had as many neural synapses and connections as a 26-year-old man, which I thought was really amazing because he was constantly thinking, he was constantly using his brain, constantly optimistic that he can figure out these extraordinarily complex formulas for all of the things he did. But I thought that was interesting, that his brain was like that of a 26-year-old.
Yes.
I don't remember how old he was when he passed away, but
I think about late 70s. But also, Einstein, I read one of his biographies years back. Einstein was a very good listener. He would always take time to get quiet and just, let's call it meditate, right? He would just get quiet.
And that's when most of his good ideas
came. And that's when he was
came.
Inspired. Mm-hmm. That's when the inspiration and the information came through. And I really think he was a good listener, and I think that's something we all need to do. Like sit in nature and be a listener, and nature can just be our backyard or a park nearby.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, he was really fascinated, and supposedly one of his great theories came to him while he was in one of these meditative states. Yes. He didn't call it meditation. I think he called it thought experiments or something.
But it was a,
but he
it was
saw
a state
himself.
of,
he saw himself. He said riding on a sunbeam, and that set him thinking about the speed of light.
Yes.
And about many of other things that led to some of his really extraordinary discoveries.
Right.
So, in other words, it's often, they have found that many of these great geniuses, there was one gentleman who discovered, I'm trying to remember, that he had the image of a snake swallowing its tail. Which gave him some really phenomenal insight scientifically. But that was from the dream state.
Yes.
So we have to pay attention to altered states of consciousness.
Yes.
Because very often they lead us to whatever the next project is.
Right. And in, when that approach to life and that concept was very, and it still is, it's very big in the Native American culture, which is the dream state is honored just as much as the physical everyday reality.
Especially among the Australian Aborigines.
Yes, that
and
group
they
too.
They are the single longest lived continuous peoples on the earth. So they've been here for over 40,000 years. So it's pretty fascinating stuff.
Yeah.
And one thing I want to say that's very helpful in being happy is obviously not only having a sense of humor, but seeking out humor. And I always say, I have a friend who sends me these absolutely wildly humorous emails, and I'm really appreciative of that.
You know, Buddha has a saying that goes, if you're not laughing, you don't get it. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's being able to, you know, the tragedies we suffer 5 years, 10 years, sometimes 20 years later, we may see those tragedies as lessons, right? And another 20, 30 years after that, we may see them as gifts. You know?
As
and
challenges rather than...
I think that's what the Buddha was saying, was if you're not laughing, you don't get it. Because although you're suffering a tragedy, of course, we're not on the level of the Buddha consciousness to really live that type of statement, but I think it's important to understand the concept of what he was trying to say there, is that all suffering has some lesson in it. All suffering has some... the lesson may not be for the individual, it may be for the society at large.
Right.
But if we would just look at it from a larger perspective, I don't think we're there yet, but hopefully we can be.
Absolutely. Well, I know that my father was one person who had this phenomenal ability to find humor in every situation.
That's wonderful.
And even though he struggled mightily with many things, primarily financial, throughout his lifetime, he could, and it was never unkind humor. It was always the kind of humor often directed at himself.
Right.
But he had this, it was phenomenal. He had this just absolutely magical ability to find humor. And so being with him was like a joy, it was a treat.
We should all have at least one friend like that.
Absolutely. Well,
be like that.
Robert, I want to thank you so much for coming
so welcome.
back.
Thank you.
It was a great pleasure.
I thank the audience for listening.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. And now we'll say goodbye, and we hope to see you next time on Lighten Up with Isabel.
Great.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Until next time, remember to live a more joyous life. Lighten up.